Good evening, I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. The al-Qaeda threat from the Arabian Peninsula. What does it mean? How does this connect to all the information that we've gained about al-Qaeda this last decade and the operations that we believe al-Qaeda is capable of, the transnational threat of al-Qaeda right now? Why is it that the embassies are closed of a sudden? How does this connect with the information along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, the borderland where we have reason to believe Zawahiri, the number one of al-Qaeda, is still in refuge, but the AQAP, that's al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, is the point of the spear, according to these warnings. Bill Roggio and Tom Joscelyn of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies joins me. This requires a discussion of the leaders of al-Qaeda and how they connect to each other to launch on the United States, on its embassies overseas, and on our allies. Tom, a very good evening to you. You have a piece up at the Long War Journal right now which discusses very carefully the relationship between al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and the head of AQAP there, and Zawahiri, whom we believe is on the borderland in Afghanistan, Pakistan. What is their relationship? Can you translate into American terms? Good evening, Tom.
Good evening, John. Well, I'd say about Zawahiri, we don't actually know where he is in Pakistan. He may very well be in one of the urban areas, for all we know, just as bin Laden was, and that certainly may provide a better refuge for him, protection from drone strikes. But what's clear from everything we've seen the last couple of years, and certainly most recently with this current plot, is that Ayman al-Zawahiri is still in charge. He's still an active manager of this international al-Qaeda terror network. And his relationship with Nasser al-Wahishi, who's the head of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, and who has now been appointed the general manager of al-Qaeda globally, is one that goes back decades. And in fact, it was Ayman al-Zawahiri who first recognized Wahishi as the leader of al-Qaeda inside Yemen. It was Zawahiri who many times was the one who was making the public endorsements or statements on behalf of Wahishi for al-Qaeda's senior-most leaders. Now, the appointment of Wahishi to the general manager position, which seems to be related to this most recent plot, and basically there's some speculation that Wahishi was trying to plan this sort of global coming out party to celebrate the fact that he's now the general manager and announce that he's now the big guy. This is not surprising to Bill and myself. I think one of the things that you have to understand analytically here, we've been arguing for a long time against both the Obama administration and members of the intelligence community, is that there's no hard line of demarcation between al-Qaeda's quote-unquote core in Afghanistan and Pakistan and their affiliated groups elsewhere. And the first example that we've used to prove this point is, in fact, Nasser al-Wahishi. We've said over and over again, this guy is clearly an al-Qaeda core member. He's somebody who served bin Laden as his protege and his aide-de-camp back in the 1990s. He's someone who was there with bin Laden during the Battle of Tora Bora, and he's someone who has had a personal relationship with Ayman al-Zawahiri now for the better part of 2 or 3 decades. So he's clearly a core al-Qaeda member, and this does not surprise us that he's now the general manager for al-Qaeda's global operations, a position that was previously held by senior al-Qaeda leaders in Pakistan and Afghanistan.
You connect then the threat, the closing of the embassies, to the Yemen manager wanting to make a statement coming 9/11. Is that what we're looking at, this period between now and the 9/11 anniversary, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically consistent with everything, everywhere from early August to the end of August, but certainly I would extend that into the 9/11 period. I think, when I was reviewing Wahishi's statements going back to, he broke out of jail in 2006 in Yemen. He escaped to Iran after 9/11. He was temporarily detained in Iran for a month and a half after living there for several months, and then was basically deported to Yemen, where he was imprisoned from 2003 to 2006. In 2006, he escapes from prison in Yemen, and he has this quick ascension through the ranks of al-Qaeda in Yemen. He basically very quickly becomes the chieftain of al-Qaeda in Yemen. And what you see as he gets out of prison, as he starts this ascension, as he starts making statements publicly, is a very clear commitment to al-Qaeda's global jihad and a very clear commitment to making Yemen the center or a center for global jihad and exporting jihad around the globe. And I think this most recent plot where they were basically gunning for possibly multiple embassies or consulates around the Middle East and North Africa and possibly South Asia, we're not sure where exactly, but I think this was all intended to be sort of the fulfillment of that vision decision to say, we're now really on top of our game and we can really do some serious damage.
Bill, a very good evening to you. We connect these two also with where the drones are striking. You have reports at the Long War Journal of a drone strike as recently as last week. July 31st is the dateline on your report, in North Waziristan, and then drone strikes in Yemen these last days, Abyan province, which is generally understood to be the area of operation for Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Is this evidence, can you find a pattern here that the CIA has been looking to decapitate this strike, as they've also been warning about it?
Yeah, particularly in Yemen, there was 3 strikes within 5 days. The last, I believe it was a day or two before this story broke. So that makes for 15 strikes in Yemen this year so far. Prior to the 3 strikes, there was only 12 over that time period.
And Abyan province, always, Bill, right?
No, not always in Abyan. Actually, these strikes have been spread out through all of Yemen. The strikes that have occurred, the last 36 strikes, they've been in, I want to say, around 10 to 12 different provinces. But in the last 3 strikes that took place in southern and central Yemen, where AQAP is typically operating. All 3 strikes targeted cars. Usually they're trying to target commanders or leaders or operatives as they're on the move. Really did catch my attention because prior to last week, there was only 12 strikes in 7+ months, and that was last year we had 42 strikes total. So we were way off the pace. All of a sudden we have this burst, and it got my ear, it perked my ears up.
So they're looking for Waheshi. They're looking for Waheshi. That's why they're hitting cars.
I suspect as much, yes, John.
Right. And the strikes in North Waziristan, is that looking for Zawahiri, or is that looking for the transmission? Can we discern anything from that?
I don't, the strikes in Pakistan are a little bit more common. They strike a wide range of targets, and while it's possible, I don't believe that Zawahiri is operating in the tribal areas. When you look at where all the top Al-Qaeda leaders, or where several top Al-Qaeda leaders were killed or captured, Bin Laden and a whole host of senior leaders, they were out. There have been some killed in the tribal areas as well, but many are killed or captured outside of the tribal areas in Pakistan's major cities.
Right. We believe they're in that Starbucks in Karachi. We always have. It's a famous Starbucks. Al-Qaeda maintains it especially. Now, Bill, these drone strikes, you note that they've picked up the pace. Can you name a date when the pace picked up? Mid-July, late July?
Oh, well, it was about the last 6 days of July where we had 3 strikes right in a row inside Yemen. In Yemen, the strikes typically occur 1 or 2 at a time. Very rarely have I seen 3 strikes in such a quick time period. The last time that occurred was when the Yemeni military was on the offensive last spring. Since then, it's just sort of been some plinking at targets here or there. But when you have 3 attacks like that, it was an indication that they're really trying to gun for someone.
Tom, is this meant to, can we take these strikes, if they're not going to get a kill, they're looking to disrupt whatever operation is underway? Is that a way to regard them?
I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, we've seen these types of strikes were used in the past to disrupt operations against targeting the West. In northern Pakistan, you saw drone strikes used to try and target the cells who were involved in Osama bin Laden's Mumbai-style plot in 2010. This was sort of a plot that Osama bin Laden had ordered by al-Qaeda operatives to go attack multiple European targets and shoot them up sort of Mumbai-style. And drone strikes and other things were used to basically disrupt that operation.
And Bill, these drone strikes, as the pattern you're watching right now, you say it's all throughout Yemen. So they have not focused on where Waheshi or any of his agents could be. They're kind of taking targets of opportunity fire.
Yeah, that's correct. So, most of the strikes were concentrated in 2 provinces prior to the end of middle 2012. What happened was they controlled the 2 provinces of Shaba and Abyan, AQAP did, and then they were dispersed. They moved around, and they went to other safe havens throughout the country. So now, you basically, we squeezed the balloon, and now we have to try and target those who have squirted out into other areas.
Tom Joscelyn and Bill Roggio. In other words, we're not watching the embassies close their doors and seal their windows and sit around and shuddering. Some members of the national security apparatus of the United States are on the offensive. as they have been these many years, despite the political conversation of Al-Qaeda on the path to defeat. Al-Qaeda is very active. It's moving around. So are the drones. So are the Hellfire missiles. So is the intelligence gathering. When we come back, we'll go back to Benghazi of a year ago because there's fresh information, and I want Tom's and Bill's help to recover what we've developed about what happened September 11th, 2012, watching for the 1 year, September 11th, 2013. I'm John Batchelor.